When my son Andre died, his wife Amber inherited everything, $70 million, the house, and then she kicked me out onto the street. "You're not welcome here anymore," she screamed. "Go die in a dumpster." A few days later, her new lawyer called me begging for help. "Mr. Wallace," he said, "I think we have a serious problem." He didn't know how right he was. Before I continue this story, please let me know where you are watching from in the comments below, and hit that like and subscribe button if you believe that what goes around always comes around. I am Isaiah Wallace. I am 70 years old, and I am standing on the cold marble sidewalk of the mansion my son built. The massive oak door is closed. The heavy click of the deadbolt sliding into place is the only sound I can hear besides the ringing in my ears. My daughter-in-law Amber just threw me out. My son, my boy Andre, has only been in the ground for 2 hours, and she just threw me out. I am still wearing my only funeral suit. It's thin. The November wind is sharp, and I don't even have my coat. She has it. She has everything. The house, the cars, the $70 million. And I am on the street. I look at the imposing facade of the house, 3 stories of glass and stone, the tall windows glowing with warm light. It looks like a fortress, and I am on the wrong side of the wall. My heart, already shattered by the loss of my son, feels like it's being crushed into dust. How did this happen? How did my life turn into this nightmare in just a few hours? It started at the cemetery. The graveside service was a blur. My sisters were there, a few old friends from the old neighborhood. Everyone was crying. Everyone except her. Amber, Andre's wife of 5 years. She stood there in a short black dress that looked more like it belonged at a cocktail party than a funeral. Designer sunglasses covered her eyes, but I didn't need to see them. I knew they were dry. While the pastor spoke about Andre's good heart and his generosity, Amber was on her phone. I could see the screen's reflection in her dark glasses, tapping, swiping, as if she was checking stock prices or booking a vacation. I told myself she was just grieving in her own way. I told myself she was in shock. I have been telling myself lies about Amber for 5 years. When the last car pulled away, leaving just the 3 of us, me, Amber, and the fresh mound of dirt that covered my boy, she finally put her phone away. She didn't look at the grave. She looked at me. "Well, that's done," she said. Her voice was flat, empty. I couldn't speak. I just stared at the casket, willing it to open, willing Andre to wake up and tell me this was all a terrible joke. "Isaiah," she said, and the way she used my name felt like a slap. "We need to be clear about what happens next." I turned to her confused. What happens next?" "We go home. We grieve." Amber actually let out a small, impatient sigh. "Listen," she said, stepping closer. "Andre and I had our wills drawn up last year. He left everything to me." I nodded. "Of course. He loved you. That's as it should be." "Yes," she said. "Everything. The house, the cars, the entire $70 million trust fund. It's all mine now." $70 million. The number just hung in the air, obscene and cold. "Okay, Amber," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "That's okay." "Good," she said, turning to walk toward her Maserati. "I'm glad you understand. I'll be having someone come by to clear out your room tomorrow afternoon. You should find somewhere else to stay." I must have blacked out for a moment. I don't remember the ride back from the cemetery. I just remember standing in the long, curving driveway watching her car. Clear out my room. I had lived in that house for 4 years in the guest wing ever since my boy Andre insisted I move in after my wife Ruth passed. "I don't want you rattling around that old place alone, Dad," he had said. That old place. The small brick house where I had raised him. The house he was suddenly too good for. I walked back up to the front door, the same door I had walked through 1,000 times. I thought, she can't be serious. She's grieving. She's not thinking straight. I just need my coat. My old wool coat. Andre bought it for me 5 Christmases ago. I rang the bell. Through the frosted glass, I saw her shape approach. She opened the door just a few inches, blocking the entrance with her body. "What do you want now?" Her voice was sharp, annoyed. "Amber, please," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I just need to get my coat. And my other things. My medication. She looked at me for a long, cold moment. I saw her eyes scan me from my old, polished funeral shoes to my graying hair. There was no pity. There was triumph. "I told you," she said slowly as if talking to a child. "I'm having your room cleared out tomorrow. I'll donate the contents." "Donate?" I stammered. "Amber, my wife's picture is in there. My things." "They're just things," she snapped. "They're junk. This is a $5 million house, Isaiah. I'm not going to have it cluttered with your poverty." Poverty. The word stung more than the wind. "Amber," I pleaded, my voice breaking. "This is Andre's home. My son." "Andre is dead," she screamed. The words echoed in the marble entryway. "And now this is my home, my house, my money, and I've been waiting 5 years to get you and your sad, poor old man act out of it." She disappeared for a second and came back. I thought she was going to get my coat. Instead, she was holding her purse. She fumbled inside it and pulled out a single, crisp $100 bill. She held it out to me. "Here," she said. "This is more than your useless junk is worth. Take it." I just stared at the money. I didn't move. "Take it," she yelled, and when I didn't, she threw the bill onto the ground at my feet. It fluttered and settled on the welcome mat. "Now get off my property," she hissed. "I've tolerated being related to you for long enough. I've put up with your cheap clothes and your simple-minded stories. I'm done. You're not welcome here anymore. Go find a cheap motel. Go die in a dumpster for all I care. Just get out of my sight." And with that, she slammed the door. The click of the deadbolt was the sound of my life ending. Or so I thought. I stood there. I don't know for how long. The grief for my son was a physical weight pressing me down. But something new was mixing with it. A cold, hard anger. A clarity I hadn't felt in years. She thought I was poor. She thought I was weak. She thought she had won. Amber, with her flashing jewelry and her fast cars, had never once asked where the $70 million came from. Andre, my son, never truly understood either. He just thought it was family money, an inheritance. He never knew his simple old father, the poor factory worker, was the one who had built it all. I looked down at the $100 bill at my feet. Very slowly I bent over. My old knees cracked in protest. I picked up the money. I smoothed it out. And I put it carefully into my pocket. I turned my back to the house and started walking down the long, winding driveway. She didn't know. She had no idea. She had just kicked out the one man who controlled every single penny she thought she owned. She just made the biggest mistake of her life. I keep walking. The wind is colder now, or maybe it's just me. Amber's voice is stuck in my head, a cruel loop playing over and over. Poor old man. Go die in a dumpster. She has no idea. She never bothered to ask. To her, I am Isaiah Wallace, the retired steelworker from Gary, Indiana. That's the story. It's a good story. I let my son Andre believe most of it. So of course that's what he told her. I wore the part well. I still do. My hands are calloused not from a foundry, but from the half-acre garden I tend behind my real house, the small one. My clothes are simple, bought from Sears or J.C. Penney. My truck is 20 years old, the paint faded, but the engine runs smooth because I service it myself. I let them believe I was just a laborer, a man who clocked in and clocked out, a man who saved his pennies to give his son a better life but who in the end didn't have much to his name. I let them think I was simple, that I was a man easily dismissed, that I was someone to be tolerated, a piece of old, embarrassing furniture from a life Andre had moved beyond. It was a good cover. It was too good. I see that now. Letting them underestimate me was a choice, a protection. But I never imagined it would curdle my son's respect. I never imagined it would feed the greed of a woman like Amber. I never imagined it would end with my son in the ground and me on the sidewalk. The steelworker story isn't a complete lie. My father was a steelworker. He came up from Alabama during the Great Migration believing in the promise of Northern steel. He died at 55, his lungs full of soot and his spirit broken with nothing to show for it but a $500 pension check that wasn't enough to bury him. I swore to God that would not be my life. I got a scholarship, I went to Purdue, I studied computer science and economics back when computers were the size of a small car and programming was done on punch cards. I didn't go to the factory, I went west. I went to Silicon Valley. I wasn't a laborer, I was a programmer. I was one of the few black men in those rooms and I knew I had to be twice as good to get half as far. I was. But I was also smart. I didn't just want a salary, I wanted ownership. I worked for a dozen startups in the 80s and early 90s. I was never the face of the company. I was never the long-haired kid in the magazine. I was the quiet man in the back room, the one who actually built the algorithms, the one who made the magic work. And I didn't take big salaries. I took stock options. I took pieces of the dream. In 1993, a young, wild-eyed kid with crazy hair came to me. He had an idea. He wanted to map genetic codes using a new processing algorithm. It sounded like science fiction. The big venture capital firms on Sand Hill Road laughed him out of the room. He needed $100,000 to build a working prototype. I looked at his math. It wasn't crazy. It was beautiful. I gave him $25,000. It was almost everything I had saved. 4 other angels came in with me. We were the first, the only ones who believed. That little company was named Cytogenetics. When Cytogenetics went public on the NASDAQ in 1998, my initial $25,000 investment became, well, let's just say I stopped counting after the first 50 million. I am not rich. I am wealthy. There is a profound difference. Rich is what Amber wants. Rich is a $70 million number. Rich is flashy cars and $80 steaks and throwing $100 bills at old men. Rich is loud. Wealth is silence. Wealth is ownership. Wealth is the power to move things without anyone ever seeing your hand. For 30 years, I have been the man who moves things. So why the lie? Why the old truck? Why the simple house? Her, my wife, my Ruth. The day the Cytogenetics stock stabilized after the IPO, I came home to our small house in Palo Alto. I showed her the brokerage statement. My hands were shaking. I thought we were free. Ruth looked at that number, all those zeros, and she didn't smile. She put her head in her hands and she began to cry. Not tears of joy, tears of terror. "Oh, Isaiah," she said, her voice thick with a fear I didn't understand. "They're going to ruin him." "Ruin who?" "What are you talking about?" "Andre," she said. "Our boy. He's only 12. If he knows this, if he grows up knowing this number exists, he will never learn how to work. He will never learn how to fail. He will never learn how to be a man. He will just be an heir, a soft, useless heir." She grew up in the church in a part of Atlanta where community meant more than cash. She saw money as a tool, but a dangerous one, a poison if not handled with respect. "Promise me, Isaiah." She grabbed my hands, her eyes fierce. "We move back home. We move back to Gary. We buy a simple house in the old neighborhood. You tell people you consult for the plant anything. We raise our son to be a good man, not a rich one. Promise me." It was the easiest promise I ever made. We sold the Palo Alto house. We moved back to Indiana to the brick house on the corner lot, the one with the big oak tree. The neighborhood was full of proud, hard-working black families. Teachers, nurses, union foremen. Good people. I set up a small anonymous office in a high-rise in Chicago under an LLC where I managed my investments. To Andre, I was just dad who took the train to an office. Ruth was happy. Andre grew up playing basketball in the alley. He had chores. He got a summer job detasseling corn. He learned the value of $1. Or so I thought. Ruth died 10 years ago. Cancer. It was quick. She was peaceful, holding my hand, believing we had done the right thing. Believing our son was safe from the poison. When Andre turned 25, I knew I had to give him the tools to build his life. Ruth was gone and I didn't want him to struggle. But I still wouldn't just hand him a fortune. So I created the Wallace Trust. I put $70 million into it, stocks, bonds, real estate. Then I sat Andre down. "Son," I said, "I'm not the poor man you think I am. I made some good investments over the years. I've set up a trust for you." I saw his eyes light up, that flash of hunger. I should have recognized it then, but I was very specific. "This isn't your money, Andre," I told him, looking him straight in the eye. "This is the family's money. You are the manager of this trust. You can live off the interest. You can use the profits. It will generate millions a year for you. You will live like a king. But you cannot touch the principal. The $70 million itself is not yours to spend. It is not yours to give away. It is not yours to lose." He didn't hear me. He only heard $70 million and live like a king. He thought it was a gift. He thought it was his inheritance. He never read the fine print of the trust document. He never asked about the underlying articles of incorporation. Why would he? The money flowed. He moved to a nicer suburb. He bought the mansion. He bought the fast cars. He started living the life that Amber found so attractive. He was the manager of the trust, but I was still the founder, the owner, the one who wrote the rules. And then 5 years ago, he brought Amber home for Sunday dinner. She was beautiful, I'll give her that. Blonde, polished like glass, and just as cold. The first time she walked into my little brick house, I saw her eyes do a quick, dismissive scan. She looked at my old, comfortable sofa, my linoleum kitchen floor, my small television set. I saw the calculation. I saw the confusion. "Andre, honey," she said, her voice dripping with a sweetness that didn't reach her eyes. "Your father's house is so charming, so simple." Andre just laughed nervously. "Yeah, Dad's old school. He doesn't like new things." From that day on, she treated me like a piece of old furniture. The poor old father-in-law. The embarrassing relative. The charity case. She would talk down to me, explaining simple things about the world as if I were a child. She never asked about my past. She never asked about my work. Why would she? I was just the poor retired steel worker. She was obsessed with the lifestyle Andre provided, the $70 million lifestyle. She just assumed it was all Andre's. She assumed it would one day all be hers. She saw me as a minor inconvenience, a loose end to be snipped, and I let her. I let her believe it. I let her underestimate me. I let her think I was nothing. Because Ruth was right. Money is a poison. It had blinded my son, and it had turned my daughter-in-law into a monster. And monsters, well, they always make mistakes. The wind cut right through that thin funeral suit. A cheap motel. That's what she said. Go die in a dumpster. I saw a taxi idling at the corner, its yellow light a small beacon in the growing dusk. I raised my hand. It was steady. The driver barely looked at me as I slid into the back. "Where to, Pops?" I leaned forward, the old springs of the seat groaning under me. I didn't say the bus station. I didn't say the Union Mission. I said the Four Seasons, downtown. The driver met my eyes in the rearview mirror. He saw the worn suit, the gray hair, the dark skin. I saw the flash of judgment in his eyes, the same dismissive look I'd seen in Amber's. He probably figured I was a doorman or maybe a janitor finishing a long, sad shift. He just shrugged. "Your money." The ride was silent. I watched the blurred lights of the city pass by. The grief for Andre was a heavy stone in my gut, a deep ocean I couldn't let myself drown in. Not yet. First, you secure the perimeter. First, you survive. Right now, I felt the cold, sharp focus of a fight. Ruth was gone. Andre was gone. I was all that was left to protect what we had built. The taxi pulled up under the gleaming gold canopy. The doorman, immaculate in his long coat and white gloves, rushed to open my door before the car had even stopped. He didn't look at my old suit with disdain. He looked at me with recognition. "Mr. Wallace," he said, tipping his cap. "It is good to see you again, sir. We were not expecting you tonight. My condolences regarding your son." The taxi driver's jaw was open. I could see his reflection in the polished granite pillar. I took the $100 bill from my pocket, the one Amber had thrown at my feet. I passed it to the driver. "Keep the change, son," I said. I walked into the lobby, the scent of fresh lilies and old money. The woman at the front desk looked up, and her professional smile became genuine. "Welcome back, Mr. Wallace. The penthouse is ready for you just as you always like it." This was my real office. This was the business trip I always told Andre I was on. He thought I was consulting at some steel plant in Ohio. In reality, I was meeting with international fund managers, restructuring my portfolios, moving the pieces on a global board my son never even knew existed. The elevator opened silently directly into the penthouse. It was vast. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the entire city glittering below me like a carpet of shattered diamonds. It was perfectly quiet. I took off the thin suit jacket, the one Amber thought was my only one. I walked to the wet bar carved from a single piece of black marble and poured a glass of ice water. I didn't want alcohol. I wanted clarity. I sat in a heavy leather chair that cost more than Andre's first car. I looked at the secure phone on the desk. It was time to call in the cavalry. I dialed the number from memory. He picked up on the second ring. He always picks up. "Harrison," I said. "Mr. Harrison, my lawyer, my confidant, my financial attack dog for 30 years. He was the only other man on earth who knew the whole truth. He was the man who helped me draft the cytogenetics investment. He was the man who helped me set up the LLC in Chicago. He was the man who helped me build the iron walls around my fortune. Isaiah. Harrison's voice was deep, steady. The kind of voice you want to hear when the world is ending. I was just about to call you. I heard the news about Andre, my friend, my deepest condolences. I am so terribly sorry for your loss. A lump formed in my throat. This was the first real sympathy I had felt all day. Thank you, Harrison, I said, my voice thick. I appreciate that. I truly do. But we have a problem. I know, he said, his voice hardening instantly. I figured we would the moment I heard Andre had passed. Let me guess. Amber. She kicked me out. I said the words tasting like ash. She kicked me out of my son's house, Harrison. Threw $100 at me. Told me to go die in a dumpster. She thinks she's inherited everything. The house, the 70 million. All of it. I waited for Harrison to explode, to yell, to curse. Instead, what I heard on the other end of the line was a laugh. It wasn't a loud laugh. It was a low, dry chuckle. The laugh of a man who has just been told a very, very stupid joke. Oh, Isaiah. Harrison sighed, catching his breath. The poor, simple girl. She really has no idea, does she? She thinks Andre's will is the final word, I said. Ah, yes. The will, Harrison said. I could hear him rustling papers on his desk. He was always prepared. I have a copy of it right here. Andre filed it with my office last year against my advice, I might add. He was very proud of it. He told Amber it was all his, Harrison. He really believed it was his to give. He did, Harrison agreed. And his personal will is perfectly legal. Let me read you the relevant part. Article 3. I, Andre Wallace, being of sound mind and body, do hereby bequeath my entire estate, including all properties, real and personal, all stocks, bonds, and assets held within the Wallace Trust, estimated at $70 million, and the primary residence at 14 Willow Creek Drive, to my beloved wife, Amber Wallace. I closed my eyes. Hearing the words spoken aloud made my son's arrogance sting. He didn't listen to me, I whispered. I told him he was a manager, not an owner. She's having that will read tomorrow morning, I said. She's going to think she's the richest widow in the state. She is, Harrison said. She will be for about 12 hours. She'll be celebrating. She'll be calling her friends. She'll probably try to buy a Ferrari. And then what? I asked. And then, Harrison's voice turned cold, precise. She's going to try and access that money. And that, Harrison continued, his voice like cold steel, is when her world ends. Because Andre's personal will, that sweet, lovely document he wrote, has absolutely no legal authority over the Wallace Trust. It's toilet paper. He never understood, I said, rubbing my tired eyes. He never read the master document, Isaiah. You and I sat in my office for a week building that trust. It is an ironclad, irrevocable, dynastic trust. It's not a simple bank account, it's a fortress. Andre was an employee. He was the trust's manager. He was given stewardship. He had a very, very generous salary paid from the interest, but he never, not for 1 second, owned the principal. I stared out the window at the city lights. He thought he did. He thought I had given it to him. That was his fatal mistake, Harrison said, and it is Amber's. You see, Andre's personal will can only dispose of Andre's personal property, and as you and I both know, he didn't really have any. He had the house, I said. No, Isaiah. The trust owned the house. The trust owned the cars. The trust owned the stocks. Andre was allowed to use them as part of his compensation package as manager. His personal property consists of his clothes, his watch collection, and whatever was in his personal checking account at the time of his death, which, knowing his spending habits, was probably nothing. So the will reading tomorrow, I started, is a lovely piece of theater, Harrison finished. Her lawyer, whoever it is, will read Andre's will. Amber will be declared the heir to his personal estate. She will pop the champagne thinking she's just inherited $70 million and a $5 million mansion. And when she tries to touch that money, that, Harrison said, is when she calls us. Because the banks, the brokerage firms, the real estate title companies, they don't answer to Andre's will. They answer to the Wallace Trust document, the one you and I signed, the one that's lodged with every financial institution Andre ever dealt with. He paused, and I could hear him turn a page. Ah, here it is, the master document. Article 4, Section B, Contingency upon death of trust manager. Are you ready for this, Isaiah? It's your own words after all. Read it to me, Harrison. Read the words that matter. Upon the death of the designated trust manager, Andre Wallace. Harrison read, his voice clear and final. All managerial rights are hereby dissolved. All assets, properties, stocks, bonds, and liquid capital contained within the Wallace Trust shall not pass to the manager's heirs or estate. Instead, full and absolute control and ownership of the entire trust and all its holdings shall immediately revert to the original founder and sole benefactor of said trust. He paused. And that, my friend, is you, Isaiah Wallace. The words settled in the quiet of the penthouse. Revert. To me. It was all coming back. Not that it ever truly left. I had built a wall around my son to protect him from the poison of wealth, and in the end the wall had held. It had protected the wealth from him, and from her. She has no idea, I whispered. She has no idea, Harrison confirmed. She's celebrating her new life, and she's about to find out she's inherited nothing but her husband's personal debts, and knowing them, those debts are probably substantial. A cold, grim satisfaction settled over me. It wasn't joy. My son was dead, but it was justice, or the beginning of it. So, what do we do, Harrison? I asked. Do we call her lawyer? Do we stop the reading? Absolutely not, Harrison said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. We do nothing. We let her have her little party, let her pop the champagne, let her feel for just one night what it's like to be a $70 million woman. Let her make her calls, let her make her plans. And then we wait for the phone to ring. We wait for the first bank to tell her, "I'm sorry, Mrs. Wallace, but we don't recognize your authority." We wait for her to discover that the locks have been changed. Because tomorrow, Isaiah, as the sole and rightful owner of that trust, your first act will be to retake possession of your assets, starting with that house. Good, I said, standing up and walking to the vast window. Let her have her happy morning. Let her celebrate. The crash will be that much harder. The next morning, I did not go to the will reading. I didn't even get out of the penthouse bathrobe. I sat by the window drinking strong black coffee, watching the sun rise over the city. Amber would be getting dressed now, practicing her sad, grieving widow face in the mirror. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Harrison handled everything. We didn't send him, of course. That would be too suspicious. Instead, we sent a junior associate from the firm, a young, hungry kid named Thomas. His instructions were simple. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not interfere. Just observe. Take notes. Be our eyes. I told Thomas to wear an ill-fitting suit to look slightly nervous, as if he were just a clerk delivering paperwork. Amber would dismiss him instantly, and she did. At 10:15 a.m., my secure phone buzzed. It was Thomas. "I'm in the lobby, Mr. Wallace." She just arrived. "How does she look?" I asked. "Like she owns the world," Thomas said. "She's wearing a white suit, laughing with her lawyer." "Good," I said. "Let her laugh. Just watch Thomas. Watch how she acts when she thinks no one important is looking." I spent the next hour in silence. I didn't turn on the TV. I just listened to the quiet hum of the hotel. I thought about Andre. I thought about Ruth. I wondered if my son had ever truly been happy, or if the weight of the money he thought he had was a burden he could never admit. The phone buzzed again at 11:30. It was Thomas. "It's done, Mr. Wallace," Thomas said. His voice was shaky, half amused, half shocked. "Report," I said. The reading was fast. Andre's lawyer read the will exactly as you said. My entire estate, including the Wallace Trust, to my beloved wife, Amber. And her reaction? She didn't even pretend to be sad. The moment the lawyer finished, she clapped her hands together. Just once. "Wonderful," she said. And then, I am not making this up, sir, she pulled a bottle of Dom Perignon out of her designer handbag, right there in the conference room. I closed my eyes. Of course she did. "She popped the cork right there," Thomas continued. "It nearly hit the lawyer in the head. She poured herself a glass, but not for anyone else. She raised it in the air. 'To Andre,' she said. He finally did something useful." The disrespect was breathtaking. "Did you say anything, Thomas?" "I tried, sir, just as you instructed. When her lawyer was packing up, I approached her. I said, 'Excuse me, Mrs. Wallace. My name is Thomas from Mr. Harrison's firm. We may have a small clerical issue regarding the original Wallace Trust Incorporation documents. And she didn't even look at me. She just waved her hand. Whatever. Send the bill to my new accountant. I tried again. Ma'am, it's about the ownership of the trust. The master document. That's when she looked at me. She looked at me like I was a cockroach. She said, "Are you deaf? I am the trust. I own everything. Now get out of my office. I don't deal with delivery boys." And then she had her lawyer escort me to the door. "You did perfectly, Thomas," I said. "She's arrogant, she's blind, and she's acting exactly as we hoped." "She's celebrating, sir? She's literally drinking champagne and making calls talking about a total liquidation." "Let her," I said, and I hung up. Total liquidation. She wasn't wasting any time. I knew what that meant. She was going for the principal. She was going to try and cash out the $70 million. I didn't have to wait long. It took her exactly 45 minutes. My secure laptop, the one tied to the trust's core accounts, lit up. A red flag. An alert from Morgan Stanley, the brokerage firm that managed the bulk of the cytogenetics stock. It was an automated security email forwarded to me as the trust founder. Subject: urgent, liquidation request, Wallace Trust account 774B. I opened it. A sell order has been placed by Mrs. Amber Wallace citing Article 3 of the personal will of Andre Wallace. The order is for the immediate liquidation of $10 million in shares to be transferred to her personal checking account. 10 million, just like that, a starter fund. I looked at the request. Then I looked at the second email, which had arrived milliseconds later. Subject: urgent, request denied, Wallace Trust account 774B. I smiled. The automated systems Harrison and I had built were working perfectly. The walls were holding. The email continued, reason for denial, requesting party. Amber Wallace is not a signatory on this account. Authority is restricted to the trust founder Isaiah Wallace or the deceased trust manager Andre Wallace. Andre Wallace's authority is now void. Per the Trust Master Document Article 4 Section B, all authority reverts to founder. I could picture the scene. Amber, champagne flute in hand, looking at her phone, her face turning from triumph to confusion, then to rage. She would be screaming at her lawyer right now. She would be screaming at the bank. She must have called them immediately. Because 5 minutes later, my personal phone rang. It was Michael Vance, my private banker at Morgan Stanley, not a junior associate, the head man. "Isaiah," he said, "my condolences about your son. A terrible tragedy." "Thank you, Michael," I said. "I'm calling because, well, we have a situation here. A woman named Amber Wallace, claiming to be your son's widow, is on the line with my legal department. She is quite agitated. She is demanding we liquidate $10 million in shares. She sent over a will." "I'm aware, Michael," I said calmly. "And what did your legal department tell her?" "We told her that the will is irrelevant. We told her that the trust's governing document is absolute and it states all assets revert to you. She did not take the news well. She's threatening to sue the bank, me, and the entire state of New York." "Michael," I said, "under no circumstances is any asset to be moved. Not $1, not one share. Freeze the account from all external access. Nothing moves without my direct voice, verified and written signature. Is that clear?" "Crystal clear, Isaiah," he said, sounding relieved. "I'll handle it. She's going to find out she can't touch a single penny." I hung up the phone. The first wall had held. Amber had just run full speed into a brick wall she didn't even know existed. She was now the proud owner of Andre's $70 million trust, and she couldn't even buy a cup of coffee with it. She couldn't touch the stocks, she couldn't touch the bonds, she couldn't touch the offshore accounts. I sat back in my leather chair. She was blocked, trapped. She had this massive fortune just inches from her grasp, but she couldn't access it. So what would a desperate, greedy woman do next? I knew exactly what she would do. She would go for the one asset she thought she could control, the one physical thing she was standing in. She would try to sell the house. She was cornered, a trapped animal. And a trapped animal is when it's most dangerous. I knew she wouldn't just give up. She wouldn't just accept that she had inherited nothing. Her pride wouldn't allow it. But her reaction wasn't just pride. It was panic. I'd seen this before in boardrooms. The desperate CEO who cooks the books because he's about to miss payroll. The frantic manager who lies about sales figures because a competitor is eating his lunch. This wasn't just greed anymore. It was desperation. Why was she in such a hurry if she truly believed she was the $70 million widow she could afford to be patient? She could take months to settle the estate, to mourn her husband properly, to slowly consolidate her power. But she wasn't. She was acting like a person whose car is about to be repossessed. She was trying to liquidate millions of dollars within hours of the will reading. She needed cash. Not just, I want to buy a new purse, cash. She needed, I have to pay someone right now or something terrible will happen, cash. The mansion was secure. The stocks were secure. My money was safe. But a new question had formed in my mind. It wasn't just about what she was trying to do. It was about why. Why the insane rush? What was she running from? I picked up the secure phone again and dialed Harrison. He picked up immediately. Isaiah, I just got off the phone with Michael Vance. He told me she's furious. She's called him 7 times. She's now threatening to go to the press and claim the bank is stealing her inheritance. Let her, I said. It's empty noise, but I have a new job for you, Harrison, something more personal. I'm listening. I want you to dig into their finances, not the trust. I want to know about them, Amber and Andre. I want to know about their credit cards, their personal loans. I want to know if they missed a car payment. I want to know if they took out a second mortgage on a house they don't even own. I want to know how much debt they're in. There was a pause on the line. You think they're broke, Harrison stated. I think, I said slowly, that my son and his wife were living a lie. I think they were living off the millions in interest from the trust while drowning in their own personal debt. I think Amber just realized the bank that was feeding her is closed forever, and now she's desperate to find another one, find out who she owes money to Harrison, find out how bad it really is. I'll get my forensic accounting team on it immediately, he said. They'll have to go through private lenders, credit card companies. It might take a day or two. Get it done, I said. I have a feeling that whatever you find is going to be the next chapter in this sad story. I hung up the phone. I knew Amber's next move would be to sell the house, but to do that, she'd have to prove ownership. She couldn't. She was trapped. All I had to do was wait for Harrison's report. The truth, as my Ruth used to say, has a way of rising to the surface just like cream, and I had a feeling this was about to get very, very ugly. I didn't have to wait 2 days. Harrison called me back in less than 24 hours. I was sitting by the window watching a storm roll in over the lake, the sky turning a dark, angry purple. The secure phone on the desk buzzed. I picked it up. Isaiah? Isaiah! Harrison's voice was completely different. The dry chuckle from the day before was gone. He sounded tired. He sounded sad. I was hoping I was wrong, he said quietly. I was hoping they were just spoiled, but this is a catastrophe. I sat up straight. Tell me. My team ran the numbers, Isaiah. They ran everything. Andre and Amber weren't just living on the interest from the trust. They were living way beyond it, for years. What do you mean the interest alone was almost $4 million a year, Harrison? How can anyone spend that much? I heard Harrison let out a long, slow breath. How, I'll tell you how. Private jets. Leased not owned at $50,000 a pop just to fly to Miami for dinner. They had a standing reservation at a hotel in Paris in a suite that cost $10,000 a night. They just kept it, whether they were there or not, just in case. He was quiet for a moment. They spent it all, Isaiah, every single dime of the interest every single year. My accountants say they were usually broke by the end of the summer, and they were taking out high-interest bridge loans against the next year's interest. They were living paycheck to paycheck, only their paycheck was $3 million. This was worse than I thought. Andre knew the rules. He knew he couldn't touch the principal. But he was treating the entire next year's income as his own. But that's not the problem, Harrison said, his voice dropping. Living off the interest is one thing. They were living on debt. Massive crushing debt. What are we talking about? Let's start with the credit cards. American Express Centurion, multiple Visa Black cards, platinum cards from every department store in Beverly Hills. The total outstanding balance as of this morning across all their personal cards is $1,240,000. I felt the blood drain from my face. $1.2 million in credit card debt. How is that even possible? Because they never paid the balance, Isaiah. They only paid the minimum. They were juggling debt. They'd use one card to pay off another. They were in a high-stakes shell game. Andre was using his reputation as the $70 million man to get insane credit limits. And Amber, God Amber, she was spending, Isaiah, six-figure shopping sprees, jewelry, cars. She bought a new car every 6 months, just because she was bored with the old one. $1 million hole. That's why she was frantic. But Harrison wasn't finished. That's the nice debt, Isaiah, he said grimly. That's the bank debt. That's not the part that scares me. It's the private loans. The markers. My stomach tightened. Markers. Andre, he wasn't just spending. He was gambling heavily, and he was losing badly. My investigators found 3 private markers, unsecured loans, not from a bank, from private investors in Las Vegas. I knew exactly what that meant. Loan sharks, the kind of people who don't send polite letters when you're late on a payment. How much Harrison, $2.5 million, owed to 3 men in Vegas who are not known for their patience, and the interest on those loans, Isaiah, it's not 6%, it's 50%, it's will break your legs interest. They were paying over $1 million a year just in vigorish just to keep these men happy. I finally understood. My son wasn't just irresponsible, he was a fool, a desperate, terrified fool, and he had tied himself to a woman who was just as desperate. So the $10 million she tried to liquidate today, I said, the pieces clicking into place, wasn't for a shopping spree, Isaiah. It was to save her skin. These people in Vegas don't care that Andre is dead. All they know is their golden goose just died. The interest payments have stopped, and now they want their principal. They're not going to wait for probate. They're not going to file a claim in court. They're going to come collect. Harrison paused. My source says they gave Amber a deadline. They called her the morning of the funeral, probably while she was getting her hair done. They gave her 72 hours to make the first payment, $1 million, or, quote, they'd start taking it out of her hide. 72 hours. The funeral was yesterday. The will reading was this morning. She was almost out of time. She's not just greedy, Isaiah, Harrison said. She's terrified. She's a dead woman walking. She just found out the $70 million ATM she was going to use to save her life is empty. She has no money, no house, no assets. She has nothing but $1.2 million in Amex debt and $2.5 million in mob debt. I stood up and walked to the window. The storm had broken. Rain lashed against the glass. So this was the truth. This was the life my son was living, a frantic lie from one loan to the next. And Amber wasn't just a parasite. She was his co-conspirator. They were in this together. This whole perfect life in that glass mansion was a house of cards, and it was collapsing. She's out of options, I said. She's out of options, Harrison agreed. She can't touch the stocks. She can't touch the bonds. She's got less than 24 hours before those men from Vegas get on a plane. What's the only asset she thinks she has? The only thing she's physically in? The house, I said. The house, Harrison confirmed. She can't sell the stocks, so she's going to try and sell the bricks. She's going to try and get a fast cash offer, an emergency loan against the house, anything to get her hands on liquid money. She still thinks Andre's will gives her the title. But it doesn't, I said. The trust owns the title. Exactly. But she doesn't know that. She's going to make her move, and fast. I'll bet you she's on the phone with a realtor right now. Good, I said, the cold focus returning. Let her. Let her try to sell it. Let her get all the way to the closing table. And Harrison, I want you to find me a buyer. Amber was a rat in a cage. And a rat, when it finds one door locked, doesn't just give up. It frantically searches for another way out. She couldn't get the $10 million from the stocks. She was humiliated. She was terrified. Those men from Vegas were not going to accept bank error as an excuse. The clock was ticking. I knew as well as I knew my own name what she would do. She would go for the only other thing of value she thought she possessed, the one thing she was physically sitting in, the mansion. That $5 million monument to my son's ego, all glass and imported stone, and views that went on forever. She believed Andre's will gave it to her. She believed it was hers to sell. She was wrong. The title, like everything else, was held securely in the name of the Wallace Trust. But she wouldn't know that. She wouldn't have read the thick stack of title deeds and insurance binders. She just saw the keys in her hand and assumed they meant ownership. I gave it 6 hours. It took her 4. My phone buzzed again. It was Harrison. She's fast, he said. I'll give her that. She's beautifully predictable. She made her move, I stated. It wasn't a question. Oh yes. She just listed the property. Not with a high-end firm, not with Sotheby's or Christie's. That would take too long. Appraisals, staging, open houses. She doesn't have time for that. She called one of those we buy ugly houses type places only for the high-end market. A cash now liquidator. The kind of firm that preys on the desperate. What's her ask, I said. That's the best part. The house was appraised last year for $5.2 million. She's listed it for $4 million, flat, cash only, must close in 48 hours. I let out a low whistle. A $4 million fire sale. She was willing to burn over $1 million just to get the cash now. She wasn't just desperate, she was terrified. She was practically screaming for help from the rooftops of her stolen mansion. She's put a sign on the lawn, Isaiah, Harrison said, and I could hear him smiling. A vulgar, bright yellow sign. For sale by owner, cash only, urgent, in her own front yard. The neighbors in that gated community must be having a heart attack. It's beautiful. She's just giving it away, I murmured. She's trying to, Harrison corrected. She's trying to sell a $5 million house that she has absolutely no legal right to. She'll find a buyer, a cash liquidator will snap up $1 million discount in a heartbeat. They'll draw up the papers. They'll get to the closing table. And then when they run the title search, they'll find the owner is the Wallace Trust, I finished. And they'll find the trust is solely controlled by Isaiah Wallace, and the whole thing will collapse. Exactly, Harrison said. She'll be humiliated. Again, publicly, in front of a new set of lawyers. It's a good plan. I was silent for a moment, looking out at the rain. No, I said slowly. No. What do you mean, no? It's perfect. She exposes herself. It's not enough, Harrison, I said. She's a cornered animal. If we just block her, she'll do something else. Something crazier. She might try to flee. She might try to harm herself, and frankly, I don't care about that. But she might try to destroy the property out of spite, set a fire, flood the place. She is not stable. What are you suggesting, Isaiah? I'm suggesting. I said a new idea forming cold and clear in my mind, that we don't just let her find a buyer. I'm suggesting that we become the buyer. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Isaiah, Harrison finally said, his voice full of admiration. You are a wonderfully devious man. She wants a fast cash buyer who won't ask questions, I said. Fine, let's give her one. She wants to sell her $5 million house for $4 million fine. We'll buy it. We'll buy our own house back from her with our own money. We'll let her get all the way to the closing. Let her sign the papers. Let her sit there, her hands shaking, waiting for that $4 million wire transfer to hit her account and save her life. And then, Harrison asked, already knowing the answer. And then, I said, looking at my reflection in the dark window, I'm going to walk into that room, and I'm going to introduce myself as the real owner of the property she just tried to sell. I picked up the secure phone. The storm outside was still raging, but inside my head everything was perfectly calm, perfectly clear. Harrison answered on the first ring. She's trying to sell the house, I said. I know, Harrison replied, his voice crisp. My team is monitoring the listing. It's sloppy, desperate. We can shut it down right now. One call to the title office and she's finished. No, I said. No, that's too easy. That's a barricade. I don't want to build a wall. I want to build a trap, a beautiful, expensive trap. What do you mean, Isaiah? I mean, she's desperate for a cash buyer. She's frantic for a fast close. She's not going to be looking at the details. She's just going to be looking at the dollar signs. I don't want to just block her, Harrison. I want to let her sell it. I want her to go through the entire process. I want her to sign the papers, shake the hand of the new owner, and sit at that table waiting for the wire transfer that will save her life. And who is this buyer? Harrison asked. We are, I said. You and I. I want you to set up a shell corporation, right now, tonight. Something anonymous, something based in Delaware or Nevada. Four Oaks Properties or Willow Creek Investments. Something that sounds solid and boring. Isaiah, that's complicated. We'd be buying our own asset. No, Harrison. We'd be catching her in the act of felony fraud. We'd be documenting in a legally binding contract her attempt to sell an asset that does not belong to her. This isn't just about stopping her. This is about proving her intent. This is about building the case. I continued the plan forming as I spoke. She wants $4 million fine. We'll offer her $4 million. She wants a 48-hour close. We'll offer her a 24-hour close. Make it irresistible. I want you to draw up the offer. Make it clean. No contingencies. All cash. The only thing she'll see is the number. She'll be so blinded by the money she'll sign anything. She'll sign her own death warrant. Harrison was quiet for a moment. I could hear the faint, rapid sound of him typing on his keyboard. A Delaware LLC, he murmured. I can have it established in the next 2 hours. Gideon Properties. How does that sound? Sounds biblical, I said. Sounds like judgment. I like it. Get it done, Harrison. I want that offer on her realtor's desk before she wakes up tomorrow. This is the final move. She thinks she's a predator. Let's see how she feels when the trap snaps shut. We didn't have to wait. Harrison's team worked all night. By 6 a.m. the next morning, Gideon Properties LLC, a newly formed entity with a very real, very large bank account funded by me, submitted an all-cash, non-contingent offer of $4 million for 14 Willow Creek Drive. The response from Amber's cut-rate realtor was almost instantaneous. I got the call from Harrison at 6:15 a.m. She bit, Harrison said. Like a starving shark. She didn't even counteroffer. She didn't ask who the buyer was. She just saw $4 million and 24-hour close. She signed the initial offer within minutes. She's demanding the closing happen tomorrow morning. She's rushing the title company. She's rushing her own lawyer. Her lawyer, I scoffed. Some ambulance chaser she found in the phone book, I assume. Exactly, Harrison said. He's probably overwhelmed and just looking for a quick commission. He won't do his due diligence on the trust's ownership. He'll just look at Andre's will. He'll see Amber's name. He'll see the property address. He'll check the yes box and move on. He has no idea he's facilitating fraud. This is the beauty of it, Isaiah. We're not even lying. Gideon Properties is a real company. The $4 million is real. The offer is real. We are proceeding as a legitimate buyer. We are letting her be the one committing the fraud. We're just providing the stage, the lights, and the audience for her to perform her final act. The next 24 hours were the longest of my life. I stayed in the penthouse. I ordered room service. I watched the city. I didn't sleep. My team, Harrison's team, was moving fast. They were the perfect buyer. They approved the fraudulent title report she provided. They waived all inspections. They sent the wire transfer for the $4 million into the closing attorney's escrow account. We made it easy. We made it too easy. Amber must have thought God himself had intervened. She must have thought she was the smartest woman alive. She had beaten the banks. She had beaten her senile father-in-law. She was hours away from $4 million in cash, enough to pay off the men from Vegas, enough to disappear. Harrison called me at 8 a.m. the next day. It's time, Isaiah. The closing is set for 10 a.m. at her lawyer's office, a small, sad-looking place above a pawn shop. How fitting. Are the funds in escrow? I asked. The $4 million is sitting right there waiting for her, Harrison confirmed. All she has to do is sign the final deed of sale. The moment she signs that paper transferring a property she does not own, she has committed a Class B felony. And the men from Vegas? I asked. My investigator says they're in town. They're waiting. They know about the sale. They're probably sitting in a car outside the lawyer's office right now waiting to collect their money the second she walks out. This was it. The pressure was immense. She had to sign. She had no other choice. I'll be there, Harrison, I said. What are you going to wear, Isaiah? He asked. I looked at the closet full of $1,000 suits. Then I looked at the thin, worn-out funeral suit I had arrived in, the one she thought was my only one. I'm going to wear the suit I was buried in, I said, the one she kicked me out in. I want her to see the poor old man one last time. Amber was ecstatic. She was going to be free. She was going to be rich. Harrison called me an hour after Gideon Properties submitted the offer. We're in, he said. She signed the offer, electronically. My guess is she didn't even read past the $4 million figure. Her lawyer, I asked. What lawyer? Harrison chuckled. The guy she hired is a bottom feeder, a man named Jerry Finnegan. His office is above a liquor store. He specializes in slip and falls. He's probably never handled a multi-million-dollar real estate deal in his life. This was perfect. He won't dig, I said. He won't even look, Harrison agreed. He sees a $4 million sale. He's thinking about his commission. He's not going to ask why the buyer is a brand new LLC. He's not going to question why the buyer waived inspection. He's just going to cash the check. And Amber, she's pushing him. She's been calling his office every 30 minutes, screaming at him to push the papers through. He's not doing his job. He's just trying to get her out of his hair so he can get paid. The next 24 hours were a blur of activity. Harrison's team, posing as Gideon Properties, was a model of efficiency. We sent over the wire transfer for the $4 million. We put it into Finnegan's escrow account. We made the money real, tangible. We dangled the bait right in front of her face. Amber, according to my investigator, was a whirlwind of frantic energy. She didn't stay hidden in the house. She was seen. She went to the Maserati dealership. She test drove a new convertible. She went to a high-end travel agency and booked a one-way first-class ticket to the Cayman Islands, leaving the day after the closing. She was already spending the money. She was already planning her escape. She was calling her creditors. We knew this because Harrison's investigator had a source inside the Vegas lender's office. She called them, Harrison reported to me hours before the closing. She sounded hysterical, triumphant. She told them, "The money is in escrow. You'll have your cash by noon tomorrow." She was practically singing. She was telling the lions that dinner was served. She was so blinded by her victory, so certain of her cleverness. She had beaten the banks. She had beaten her dead husband. And most importantly, she had beaten the poor old man. She had successfully sold my house using my money, and she was going to walk away with $4 million of it. She never stopped to ask why it was so easy. She never wondered who Gideon Properties was. She just saw the escape hatch. She saw the $4 million that would solve all her problems. She saw the door, and she ran right through it. And now it was time to close it behind her. The morning of the closing, I got dressed. I didn't put on one of my custom-tailored suits from the penthouse closet. I put on the same thin, black, ill-fitting suit I had worn to my son's funeral, the suit she had kicked me out in. I put on the old, scuffed dress shoes. I didn't even comb my hair. I wanted her to see the poor old man she had despised. I wanted her to really look at the man she had called junk one last time. I took a cab to the address Harrison had given me. It wasn't a glittering downtown high-rise. It was a sad two-story brick building on the bad side of town. Just like Harrison said, the first floor was a liquor store with bars on the windows. The lawyer's office was up a narrow, dimly lit staircase. The door just said, J. Finnegan, Esquire, Personal Injury. I pushed it open. The smell of stale coffee and dusty paper hit me. A young woman at a metal desk looked up annoyed. "Can I help you?" "I'm here for the Wallace closing," I said quietly. She looked confused. "The closing's at 10. Mrs. Wallace isn't here yet. I know, I'm with the buyer, Gideon Properties. They asked me to sit in. Observe." She looked me up and down. The cheap suit, the old shoes. She clearly didn't believe me, but she didn't care enough to argue. "Whatever. The conference room is down the hall. Don't touch anything." I walked into the conference room. It was a small windowless box with a wobbly table and 6 mismatched chairs. The walls were a sickly yellow. This was it. This was the place Amber's $70 million dream was coming to. I didn't sit at the table. I chose a chair in the darkest corner of the room away from the door, and I waited. I heard Harrison arrive. He didn't come in. He was the buyer. He was waiting in his car parked across the street. He was our ace in the hole. At 10 a.m. on the dot, I heard the outer door open. I heard her voice, loud, triumphant. "Jerry, are we ready? Is the money here? Let's get this done. I have a plane to catch." I heard the lawyer Finnegan stammering. Yes, Mrs. Wallace, right this way. The buyer's representative. Well, he's in here." The door swung open. Amber strode in. She was a vision. She was wearing a brilliant white pantsuit, her blonde hair pulled back. She looked like she had just stepped off a yacht. She was glowing with victory, her designer handbag swinging. "All right, Jerry," she said, pulling out a chair at the head of the table. "Where do I sign? I want to see the wire transfer confirmation." She didn't even look around the room. She was entirely focused on the stack of papers in front of her. Finnegan, a nervous, sweaty man in a cheap suit, started fumbling with the documents. "Yes, ma'am. This is the final deed of sale. If you'll just sign here, here, and here. And this is the escrow statement showing the $4 million from Gideon Properties." She grabbed the pen. It was only after she had signed the first page that she finally looked up, her eyes scanning her new kingdom. And then she saw me. She froze. The pen hovered over the paper. Her smile didn't just fade, it shattered. Her face went from triumph to confusion to pure, unadulterated rage. "What?" she hissed, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Are you doing here?" I just sat there in the corner in my old suit. I didn't say a word, I just looked at her. "Get him out of here," she screamed at Finnegan. "What is he doing here? Is this a joke? I will not be harassed. Call security." Finnegan looked terrified. "Ma'am, I don't—" "He said he was with the buyer." "With the buyer?" Amber laughed. A short, ugly sound. "The buyer is Gideon Properties, you idiot, not this. This beggar, he's nobody. He's my dead husband's senile father. He's a bum. Get him out now or the whole deal is off." She was standing now, her face red, her hands clenched. She was losing control. "Actually," a new voice said from the doorway, "he is with the buyer." Amber spun around. Mr. Harrison was standing in the doorway. He was not wearing a cheap suit. He was wearing a $3,000 custom-tailored suit. He was tall. He was imposing. He radiated power and authority in a way her sweaty little lawyer could only dream of. Amber's eyes widened. She recognized power when she saw it. Who are you?" "I am Mr. Harrison," he said, stepping into the room. "I am the chief counsel for Gideon Properties. And this," he said, gesturing calmly toward me, "is my associate." Amber looked back and forth between us. The powerful lawyer, the old bum in the corner. She couldn't make the pieces fit. I don't understand," she stammered. "I know," Harrison said, his voice kind. "You don't understand much, do you, Amber?" Amber's eyes scanned the room, finally landing on the dark corner where I sat. She froze. The pen stopped moving. Her triumphant manic smile didn't just fade, it cracked and fell off her face. Her perfectly made-up features twisted into a mask of disbelief, which then instantly curdled into pure, venomous rage. "What?" she hissed, her voice low and dangerous. "Are you doing here?" I just sat there, my hands folded in my lap. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just met her gaze. "Get him out of here!" she shrieked, suddenly exploding. She jabbed a finger, her expensive rings flashing under the fluorescent lights pointing directly at me. "Finnegan, what is he doing here? Get him out!" "Jerry." Finnegan, her sweaty lawyer, jumped as if he'd been shocked. "Ma'am? Mrs. Wallace? I don't know." "You don't know!" Amber screamed, her voice echoing in the small, sad room. "He's a beggar. He's nobody. He's my dead husband's senile, broke father. He's harassing me. I will not stand for this. This is a private closing. Call security. Get that thing out of my sight right now." She was hyperventilating, her face turning a blotchy red under her foundation. This wasn't just anger. This was panic. She could see her $4 million, her escape, her entire future being threatened by the one person she despised most in the world. She was terrified that my very presence would somehow ruin the deal. Finnegan was wringing his hands, his eyes darting between me and his furious client. "Mrs. Wallace, please calm down. Sir," he said, turning to me, his voice pleading, I think you have the wrong office. This is a private legal matter." "He's not deaf, you idiot," Amber yelled. "He's just stupid. Get him out. I am not signing another piece of paper until he is gone. Do you understand me, Jerry? The whole deal is off unless he is physically removed from this building." Now, the threat hung in the air. The deal is off. She was willing to risk everything, her rage momentarily overriding her desperation. The Vegas lenders flashed through my mind. She couldn't afford for the deal to be off. She was bluffing, but she was a very, very angry bluffer. "Ma'am, please," Finnegan stammered. "The funds are in escrow. We just need your signature. Let's just ignore him. He's just an old man. He can't do anything." "He's looking at me," she screamed. "I won't sign. I won't get him out." She was about to have a full-blown tantrum right there in the lawyer's office. She raised her hand as if to throw the pen at me, and that's when a new voice, calm and deep as a winter lake, cut through the hysteria. "Actually," the voice said from the doorway, "he's here at my invitation." Amber spun around. Jerry Finnegan nearly jumped out of his cheap squeaking chair. Mr. Harrison was standing in the doorway. He wasn't just standing there. He was occupying the space. He was 6'3", immaculate in a custom-tailored charcoal suit that cost more than Finnegan's entire office. His shoes were shined to a mirror finish. His silver hair was perfectly cut. He held a slim leather briefcase in one hand. He was the absolute picture of old-money East Coast law and unshakable power. Amber's mouth fell open. She recognized power when she saw it. This was not Jerry Finnegan. Who are you?" She stammered, her rage instantly replaced by confusion. "My name is Mr. Harrison," he said, stepping calmly into the room. His eyes swept over the wobbly table, the stained carpet, and Jerry Finnegan before landing on Amber. His look was not unkind. It was appraising, like a scientist looking at a very interesting insect. "I am the chief counsel for Gideon Properties," Harrison announced. Finnegan's face went pale. This was the buyer, the real buyer, not some faceless LLC, but this force of nature. "Mr. Harrison, sir," Finnegan said, scrambling to his feet, We weren't expecting you in person, just your associate." "Yes," Harrison said smoothly, walking to the table. He placed his leather briefcase down with a soft, expensive thud. "I decided to handle this one myself. These large transactions can be so delicate." He then turned and nodded politely to me, still sitting in the corner. "And as I said, Mr. Wallace is here with me. He is my associate." Amber was completely lost. Her brain was visibly short-circuiting. She looked at Harrison, the picture of wealth. Then she looked at me, the picture of poverty. Then back to Harrison. Your associate," she repeated, her voice a disbelieving squeak. "What are you talking about? He's a retired factory worker. He's nothing." "Oh, he is far from nothing, Mrs. Wallace," Harrison said. He smiled a thin, polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Wallace is one of my oldest and most valued clients. And in this particular transaction, he's a little more than just an associate." Harrison looked at the signed papers on the table. He looked at Amber. Then he dropped the bomb. "You see, Mrs. Wallace," he said, his voice still perfectly calm, perfectly polite. "Mr. Wallace isn't just with the buyer. He is also the sole legal owner of the property you are currently attempting to sell." Amber's face. It was a sight I will carry with me to my grave. The color just it left. It drained away, leaving her foundation looking like a pale, chalky mask. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Her lawyer Finnegan looked like he was about to be physically ill. "Owner, I don't, the title report, the will is clear." "The will?" Amber finally whispered. Her voice was a dry, papery rattle. "Andre's will, it's ironclad. He gave me everything. He gave me the 70 million. He gave me the house. It's mine." Harrison sighed. It was a patient, almost fatherly sigh, the kind you give a child who is insisting that 2 + 2 = 5. "Ah, yes, the will." He gestured to his briefcase. "We have a copy of that. It's a very sweet document, full of lovely sentiments. To my beloved wife, Amber." He stepped forward and placed his slim leather briefcase on the wobbly conference table. The click of the brass latches opening echoed in the tiny, silent room. He didn't pull out a gun. He pulled out something far more powerful, a thick, blue-bound document heavy with official seals and ribbons. He slid it across the table toward Finnegan, who stared at it as if it were a venomous snake. "Andre's will is sweet," Harrison repeated, his voice dangerously soft. "But in relation to the assets you actually care about, Mrs. Wallace, it is utterly, completely, and legally worthless." "You're lying," Amber shrieked, finding her voice again. It was high and thin. "You're trying to steal my money, Jerry. Tell him. The will is legal. Tell him." And Finnegan, sweating through his cheap suit, picked up the blue document with trembling hands. What is this?" he muttered. "That," Harrison said, "is the Wallace Trust Master Document, the original Articles of Incorporation, the governing text, the document that created the $70 million Andre was so fond of spending. Andre's will is a suggestion, Mr. Finnegan. This document, this is the law." Amber looked at her lawyer, her eyes wide with panic. "Jerry, do something." Jerry was reading. His eyes were darting back and forth, flying across the page. He started flipping faster and faster, his hands shaking. Oh no," he muttered, his face turning ashen. "Oh my God." "What?" Amber screamed, grabbing his arm. "What is it?" "Read it aloud, Mr. Finnegan," Harrison suggested kindly. I believe you're looking for Article 4, Section B, the contingency clause. It's always been my favorite part. Finnegan looked up, his eyes full of pure professional terror. This can't be right. This document supersedes the will. Read it, Harrison commanded. Finnegan licked his dry lips. He read, his voice trembling so badly he could barely be understood. Upon the death of the designated trust manager Andre Wallace, all managerial rights are hereby dissolved. He paused, his breathing getting shallow. All assets, properties, stocks, bonds, and liquid capital contained within the Wallace Trust shall not pass to the manager's heirs or estate. Amber grabbed the table to keep herself upright. No. Keep reading, Mr. Finnegan. Harrison said, his voice a quiet razor. The last line. Instead, Finnegan read, his voice cracking, full and absolute control and ownership of the entire trust and all its holdings shall immediately revert to the original founder and sole benefactor of said trust. Revert, Amber whispered. What does that mean, revert to who? Harrison smiled, a thin, sharp, merciless smile, and for the first time he pointed a long, elegant finger directly at me, at the old man in the corner, the beggar, the bum, the thing she wanted removed. It means, Mrs. Wallace, that the second Andre's heart stopped, every single penny of that $70 million, every share of cytogenetics stock, every car, and yes, the very house you are currently in contract to sell, all of it, snapped back like a steel trap to its one true legal owner. I finally stood up. I walked out of the shadow. I stood next to Harrison at the head of the table. Amber looked at me. Her mind was completely broken. She was looking at the cheap suit and the scuffed shoes and the man Harrison just said owned $70 million. The two images could not exist in her brain at the same time. You, she breathed. The word was full of so much confusion. No, it's not possible. You're poor. I am not poor, Amber, I said. My voice was quiet, but it filled the small room. I am just quiet. I am the founder. I am the benefactor. I am Isaiah Wallace, and that, I said, tapping the blue document, is my money. That, I said, tapping the deed of sale she had signed, is my house. Amber just shook her head, muttering over and over. No. The will, Andre's will, he loved me. He gave it to me. He tried to give you what was never his to give. Harrison said, his voice softening just a fraction. Andre's will is still perfectly valid, Mrs. Wallace. You are still his sole heir. You have without question inherited his entire personal estate. A tiny, insane spark of hope lit her eyes. His estate, so there's something... Yes, Harrison said. He pulled out another, much thinner file. We took the liberty of running a full inventory of Andre Wallace's personal assets. The things he actually truly owned, free and clear, that were not part of the trust. Amber leaned forward, her hands gripping the table. This was it. There had to be something. First, Harrison said, putting on a pair of sleek reading glasses, we have a 2010 Rolex Submariner, a lovely watch. Unfortunately, our appraiser noted the winding mechanism is broken and the crystal is cracked. Estimated value, $400. For parts. Amber's face tightened. Second, Harrison continued, we have what appears to be a rather extensive collection of sneakers, mostly Air Jordans, some of them still in the box. Estimated value to the right collector, perhaps $30,000. $30,000, Amber hissed. That's it, that's all he had. Oh no, Harrison said, looking at the last page of the file. That's not it. There is one more item in the estate, the largest one in fact, a substantial liability. A what? A debt, Mrs. Wallace, Harrison said. A very large, very real debt. It seems your husband had a few personal credit cards that were not paid by the trust, and as his loving wife you were a co-signer on all of them. Harrison slid one final piece of paper across the table. It was a summary statement. Congratulations, Amber, Harrison said, his voice perfectly flat. As the sole heir to Andre's personal estate, you have just officially inherited $1,240,000 in American Express and Visa debt. Amber stared at the paper, at the negative number. $1.2 million. No, she whispered. That's our debt. The trust pays that. Andre always paid that. No, Amber, I said, speaking for the second time. The trust paid his business expenses, his living expenses. The trust did not pay for his gambling markers. It did not pay for your six-figure shopping sprees. Andre was paying those debts with other loans. He was juggling, and now the juggling has stopped. And the music has stopped, Harrison added. The trust is closed to you. The house is not yours. The stocks are not yours. The only thing you have to your name is that debt, and I suppose a very impressive sneaker collection. Amber just stared at the paper, at the negative number, the minus sign, $1,240,000. Her mouth opened, but only a dry, gasping sound came out. She looked up at Harrison, her eyes wide, unblinking, full of a terrifying primal confusion. The debt, she finally stammered. The words were small, broken. But Andre, the trust pays the bills. Andre always paid the bills. Harrison shook his head slowly, almost sadly. No, Mrs. Wallace. The trust paid Andre's salary. A very generous salary paid from the interest. What he and you chose to do with that salary, that was your business. These credit cards were in your personal names. You were a co-signer on every single one. You spent the money, Mrs. Wallace, both of you. He leaned forward just a fraction. As his wife, and as the legal co-signer on all this personal debt, you are now the sole heir to his personal estate. And this, he tapped the debt statement, this is his personal estate. So as I said, congratulations. You have inherited all of it. No, she shrieked, the sound tearing through the quiet room. No, the house. The sale. The $4 million, Finnegan, tell them. The money is in escrow. We'll use that money. We'll pay it right now. She looked at her lawyer, Jerry Finnegan, with desperate, pleading eyes. Finnegan looked like a man who had just been told his entire life was a lie. He was pale, sweating, and staring at the blue Wallace Trust document as if it were a bomb. Mr. Finnegan, Harrison prompted gently. Are you all right? You look unwell. Perhaps you're just realizing the implications of what has happened here. Finnegan looked up at Harrison, his eyes full of terror. This document, the trust, if this is real, then the sale... What sale, Mr. Finnegan? Harrison asked, his voice full of innocent curiosity. Do you mean the fraudulent sale, the one where your client just signed a legally binding contract? I have the copies, thank you, attempting to sell a $5 million property that she does not own. That sale. Finnegan made a small choking sound. Fraud. Yes. Harrison continued, his voice becoming hard. A Class B felony, I believe. Attempting to sell property not one's own with full knowledge and intent. And you, Mr. Finnegan, as her legal counsel, facilitated it. You failed to perform even the most basic title search. You failed to verify the true owner of the asset. You were so eager for your commission that you led your client right into committing a federal crime. Finnegan slid down in his chair, all the air gone out of him. He was a ruined man. Amber didn't hear any of that. She was still fixated on the money. The $4 million, her lifeline. I don't care, she screamed. The money is there, I signed. Pay the debts. Pay them, just give me what's left. I just want the money. Oh, the money is certainly there, Harrison agreed smoothly. Gideon Properties is a very reputable firm. The $4 million is sitting very prettily in your lawyer's escrow account. Amber let out a sob of relief. Then it's fine. It's fine. But of course, Harrison continued, Gideon Properties entered into this contract under the assumption that you were the legal owner. Now that we have discovered you are in fact not the owner, that you are attempting to sell a house that belongs to my other client. He gestured to me. Well, we must immediately rescind our offer due to, let's call it, catastrophic misrepresentation on the seller's part. Rescind, Amber whispered. The $4 million in your escrow account will be wired back to Gideon Properties by noon today, Harrison said. Your commission, Mr. Finnegan, I'm afraid is zero, and you, Mrs. Wallace, are left with, well, let's see. This was the moment, the final calculation. I watched her face as her mind, her frantic, terrified mind, finally put all the pieces together. No $70 million from the stocks. That was blocked. No $4 million from the house sale. That was gone. No house. It wasn't hers. no cars. They belonged to the trust. She had nothing. No, wait. She had less than nothing. She had $1,240,000 in credit card debt. She had $2.5 million in markers owed to men in Las Vegas, men who were probably waiting for her, men who were expecting a payment today. She had no assets, no escape, no future. She looked at her lawyer, Finnegan. He was just staring at his desk, his life over. She looked at Harrison. He was a stone wall of polite legal indifference. And then finally she looked at me. She looked at the old man in the cheap suit, the beggar, the junk, the senile factory worker she had told to go die in a dumpster. Her eyes were wide. The pupils were huge. There was no rage left. There was no arrogance. There was just a vast, bottomless, silent abyss of pure terror. "Isaiah," she whispered. Her voice was unrecognizable. It was the voice of a child. "Dad, please, please, you can't. Andre, he was your son. You can't. You wouldn't. Please help me. Help me." I just looked at her. I held her gaze. I didn't smile. I didn't scowl. I showed her nothing. I just let her see the poor old man she had despised. She saw the answer in my silence. The last bit of strength left her. The realization hit her body like a physical blow. The men from Vegas, the debt, the total, complete, and utter ruin. It was all real. "No," she said, a tiny little sound. "No." Her eyes rolled back into her head, her knees buckled. She didn't faint like a lady in a movie. She didn't swoon. She collapsed. It was a total system failure. She fell straight down, hitting the wobbly conference table on the way, sending the stack of fraudulent papers scattering across the floor. She landed in a heap, a tangle of white pantsuit and expensive hair, unconscious on the dirty, stained carpet of Jerry Finnegan's office. There was a terrible silence. Finnegan just stared at her, frozen. Harrison calmly stepped around her body. He picked up the blue Wallace Trust document from the table, closed his briefcase, and snapped the latches shut. "Well," he said to Finnegan, "I believe our business here is concluded. My associate and I will see ourselves out. I suggest you call an ambulance for your client, and then I strongly suggest you call a lawyer for yourself." I walked to the door. I stopped and looked down one last time at Amber, crumpled on the floor. She had told me to go die in a dumpster. She was the one left in the trash. A few days later, I was home. Not in the small brick house in Gary, not in the Four Seasons penthouse. I was in my house. The mansion, Andre's house, the one Amber had tried to sell. The first thing I did, using the full authority of the Wallace Trust, was hire a security team. They changed every lock. They recoded the gates. They swept the entire property for bugs and found 3 that Amber had planted, probably to spy on Andre. The house was now a fortress once again, but this time it was protecting me. I was sitting in the library. It was Andre's favorite room, but he had never really used it. He just liked the idea of it. He had filled the shelves with books he never read, bound in expensive leather bought by the yard for their color. I, on the other hand, was actually reading. I was sitting in a heavy, comfortable chair, a rare first edition of W.E.B. Du Bois in my lap, a glass of water at my side. The house was quiet. The silence was peaceful. It was the sound of order being restored. Then the chime for the front gate rang. It was a soft, digital sound that echoed through the house. I looked at the security monitor built into the library wall. A high-definition, full-color screen. It showed the front gate. And there she was. It was Amber. But it wasn't the Amber from the lawyer's office. It wasn't the triumphant woman in the white pantsuit, nor the furious harpy she had become. This was a different person. She was on foot. She must have taken a taxi and been dropped at the main road because she had walked the long, winding driveway. She was wearing... I had to squint to recognize the clothes. Jeans, a simple faded t-shirt, sneakers, no designer handbag, no jewelry. Her blonde hair wasn't perfectly styled. It was damp from the lingering rain, pulled back in a messy ponytail. Her face was bare, scrubbed clean of makeup, and it looked raw, puffy. She looked thin, and she looked terrified. She was standing at the call box just outside the massive iron gates. She was hugging herself, shivering even though the day wasn't that cold. She looked small, pathetic. I pressed the intercom. "Yes." Her head snapped up. She looked around confused until she saw the camera lens. Her voice came through the speaker. It was a completely different voice. It was small, broken. "Isaiah," she said, "please, it's Amber. Please, I need to talk to you. I have nowhere else to go." I looked at her on the screen, the woman who had told me to go die in a dumpster, the woman who had laughed while she tried to steal my life's work, the woman who had just days ago been planning her escape to the Cayman Islands. Now she was outside my gate begging to be let in. "I don't think we have anything to talk about, Amber," I said, my voice coming through the small metal speaker at the gate. "No, please," she cried, and this time I heard a real genuine sob. "Please, Isaiah, you don't understand. They're waiting for me, the men from Vegas. They were at the lawyer's office. They saw it all go down. They followed me. They said I have until tonight, or they're going to... Isaiah, please." She was crying now, real ugly, tears her face collapsing. They took the car. Andre's, the car they let me keep. They took it. They said it was a down payment. I have nothing. Please, just let me in. Just for a minute. I'm scared. I'm so scared." I watched her. The predator had become the prey. The men she and Andre had borrowed from the men they thought they could control were now at her door. And she had run to the one person she thought she had destroyed. She had run to me. I pressed the button to open the gate. The heavy iron gates groaned open. I watched on the monitor as she flinched at the sound as if she expected it to be an alarm. She pushed the gate just an inch and slipped through the gap. I watched her walk up the long, curving driveway. The last time I saw her on this path, she was getting out of a Maserati, laughing, dripping in diamonds on her way to my son's funeral. Now she was walking. Her sneakers were dirty. Her head was down. She looked like a refugee walking toward a border she wasn't sure would let her in. It took her a full 2 minutes to reach the front steps. She stood on the welcome mat, the same welcome mat where my $100 had landed just a few days ago. She looked at the massive oak door, her hand raised, trembling, too afraid to knock. So I opened it for her. I stood there filling the doorway. I was still in my simple clothes, my old wool cardigan, my house pants. I didn't say a word. The moment she saw me, her entire body just broke. All the fight, all the arrogance, all the fire, it just evaporated. Her face crumpled. Her knees gave out and she fell. She didn't just kneel. She collapsed onto her hands and knees on my porch, her forehead almost touching the mat. "Isaiah!" she sobbed. It was a horrible raw sound like an animal in a trap. "Isaiah! Dad! Please!" She was weeping, her shoulders shaking violently. "Please, you have to help me. You have to. They're taking everything. The condo board froze my bank accounts for the unpaid dues. The men from Vegas, they're not joking, Isaiah. They were outside my mother's house. They're watching me. They said I have until midnight. Midnight, they're going to kill me." She looked up at me, her face a mess of tears and snot. The beautiful, polished mask was gone. This was the real Amber, small, weak, and terrified. "I have nowhere else to go," she cried, grabbing at the hem of my pants. "They took the car. They took my jewelry. My mother won't answer the door. She said I've ruined the family name. I have nothing. I have nothing left." I just looked down at her. I felt nothing. No pity. No anger. Just a great, empty stillness. The end of a long, sad story. "Please," she begged, her voice now a desperate, hoarse whisper. "I'll do anything. I'll sign anything. I'll be your servant. I'll clean your floors. I'll wash your clothes. I'll cook for you. I'll be your maid. Just don't let them kill me. Please, Dad, I'm begging you. Don't let me die like this. Please, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." She was sobbing, bowing her head to my feet, waiting for my judgment, waiting for me to save her, just like she and Andre had always been saved. I let the silence sit there. I let her kneel on the cold stone. I let her feel the terror. I let her feel what it's like to have no money, no power, and no one to call. I let her feel for just 1 minute what she had wished upon me. Finally, I reached into my pocket. Not the pocket of my funeral suit, but the pocket of my cardigan. I had transferred the $100 bill. I had been carrying it with me, waiting for this exact moment. Her head was still bowed. She thought I was considering her offer. She thought I was deciding whether or not to save her life. I pulled out the bill. It was creased. The same one. Her desperate, tear-filled eyes looked up as my hand came forward. She thought I was reaching for her to help her up. Instead, I held out the money. She stared at it, confused. "I think," I said, my voice perfectly quiet, perfectly calm. "You dropped this." I didn't throw it at her. I didn't toss it. I held it out until she, confused and shaking, reached up and took the creased $100 bill from my hand. She looked at the money, then she looked at me, and in her eyes I saw the last final realization. There would be no rescue. There would be no savior. "And Amber," I said as I began to close the heavy oak door, "I hear the steel mill back in Gary is hiring. My father used to work there. It's honest work. You should try it." I closed the door. I didn't slam it. I closed it softly, firmly, until I heard the heavy click of the lock sliding into place. I turned my back on the door. I did not listen to the wail that came from the other side. I just walked back to my library, picked up my book, and began to read. Here is the lesson we can take from Isaiah's story. This story teaches us a powerful lesson about the difference between appearance and reality. It shows that true wealth is not measured by flashy cars or expensive houses, but by integrity, quiet strength, and self-respect. Greed, arrogance, and the mistreatment of others, especially family, ultimately lead to a person's own downfall. It proves that those who judge others based on what they have will always be blind to who they are. In the end, dignity is the only currency that truly matters, and the consequences for betraying it are always severe. What did you think of Amber's downfall? What would you have done if you were in Isaiah's position? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more life stories just like this one. We look forward to seeing you next time.